Wiltshire.
Now, though, the desperate scenes we've all seen in pictures from Kabul airport are beyond tragic, aren't they? As thousands of families try to leave Afghanistan to escape the Taliban. But can Wiltshire do anything to help, really? This morning we're going to be looking at how the county's preparing to take in more of those evacuees being flown out of Kabul by the RAF. We'll hear later from Swindon's Harbour Project charity, which runs many of the support services for refugees in the town. And one of Wiltshire's MPs wants to use some of our county's spare military housing as a place for them to stay until a longer-term home is found. Our political reporter Dan O'Brien has been speaking to the Devizes MP, Danny Kruger.
Yes, in Wiltshire we've got a real sense of our obligation to the men and women who've gone out to fight in Afghanistan from the bases here, and I really do not think that the sacrifices that our forces have made have been in vain. Very real advances were made over 20 years. Millions of children getting educated, real disruption of heroin exports, no terrorism being launched from Afghanistan in the West during this period. So, all of those things would not have happened if our soldiers had not been out there. The fact that we are now ceding control back to the Taliban, the force that we evicted from power 20 years ago, is a great shame and a great pity. And I think we really need to understand how it's happened. The real failure seems to have been in intelligence. We did not anticipate the rate at which the Taliban would advance. Someone has blundered at the intelligence level, but none of our troops, none of our forces should feel in any way responsible. And in fact, they should be very proud of what they've done.
We now have this huge obligation to people fleeing Afghanistan, particularly those who have helped British forces and British organisations along the way. What role should Wiltshire play in assisting with that?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm very pleased to say that the council leader of Wiltshire, Richard Kruger, was in touch with me immediately that the crisis developed to say Wiltshire stands ready to play its role in supporting Afghan families, the interpreters, the civilian contractors who have supported our forces over 20 years. They helped us and we now have to help them. I think there is the opportunity in Wiltshire for us to possibly do more for two reasons. One is because, as I say, we have a particular relationship with so many Afghans who've helped us. But we also have a lot of empty homes. MOD owned, and the Ministry of Defence owns a lot of homes that used to be occupied by forces' families and are now lying empty and in fact going to go back to their private sector landlord in due course. So I think there might be a role for us to play, only in the short term. This is not a long-term solution, but if there are interpreters and contractors and Afghan families who need housing in the short term, then I'm hopeful that Wiltshire will be able to help.
I mean, in a sense, what you're saying there is great that we have such capacity to help people who are in desperate need, but why are these homes empty in the first place? We know affordable housing is often so hard to come by at the best of times, particularly in this county. What's the situation with these homes? Why are they empty?
It's a very big and important question, and you're right to raise it. The answer is that as the configuration of our forces has changed over the years, a lot of houses are no longer needed, and they were sold many years ago to a landlord called Annington Homes, who've leased them back to the MOD to house forces families. As those families no longer need the housing, they're being returned to Annington, who are then going to put them on the private market. But in the immediate term, there we have some empty homes. There's quite a few in North Wiltshire, some in the military garrisons along the plain, some near Trowbridge, I understand. So the little pockets of housing.
What's your feeling on the ground, Danny, of whether you think Wiltshire and your constituency is ready and willing to welcome those escaping Afghanistan, or do you think a lot of people are quite worried about that?
Well, I think it's very important that everybody knows, and that it's true, that everyone we're admitting to the country deserves a place here. There is a massive crisis in Afghanistan at Kabul airport at the moment. Part of that is, I'm afraid, for the very necessary reason that we need to check and vet everybody who's getting on a plane to the UK. These are people who have worked, they are English speaking, they've worked with British forces, they've supported our troops, they've supported this country and our efforts in Afghanistan. And I think they're open-hearted towards the people who deserve asylum. We as a community need to get around the families to ensure that they get whatever they need so that they feel properly integrated and that they then don't feel, isolated.
That is Danny Kruger, Conservative MP for Devizes, talking to Dan O'Brien. Well, Wiltshire Council's leader, Richard Kruger, has confirmed he's in talks with the Ministry of Defence about using some of those empty army homes for Afghan refugees. So we'll let you know how that develops.